Hi friends, we're getting close to tax day, so I thought that I would tell you a miracle story about taxes. This story is also about restitution. So what is restitution? Well, restitution is the act of making something right that we did wrong. The Bible has actually quite a lot to say about restitution. I've never really heard any sermons about it. I don't remember many people talking about restitution, but in Proverbs 6:31 it says that if a thief steals something, then he must pay back 7 times what he stole. That's a lot. So if he stole $100, then he has to pay back $700. Zacchaeus told Jesus that if he had cheated anyone, that he would pay back 4 times the amount. So now to my story. In 1995, I was working on the East Coast, and I decided to quit my job and move back here to the West Coast. I had been working there on the East Coast for 4 years. So, unfortunately, during that time of my life, I was not really trying to live the Christian life. I really regret that. I had been paying my state income tax each year, but when I moved, I thought to myself, I'm moving clear across the country. I'm moving 3,000 miles to a different state, and I just won't pay that last year that I owed. So I owed for 1994 and part of 95. But 3 years later, in 1998, I had a wonderful conversion experience with God. God did some amazing things in my life. He changed my life in amazing ways. At that time, I sat down and I made a list of all the things I could think of that I had done wrong in the past 10 years. So, unfortunately, there was quite a few things on the list, and I wanted to make those things right. That's why I made the list. Some of these items involve money to make them right, which is kind of hard. If you don't have the money, then how do you make it right? But in 1998, at that time of my conversion, I told God that if I ever got the money, that I would make those things right on my list that involved money. And the taxes were one of those things. I never had much money through the years. I struggled along, and one year I was even on unemployment for around a year before I got a job. But in 2009, I got a good job in Portland. And so it was pretty good paying, and I thought that I could pay that tax back. Well, I estimated that I probably owed for those 2 years around $3,000. But as you probably know, they will add interest and penalties and late fees, and by the time they add all that, it can be quite substantial. And so I estimated that I probably owed a total of around $8,000 to $10,000. Now, I had just started that job. I was within the first 3 months of the job, and so that seemed like a lot of money, $8,000 to $10,000. I had other bills. I remember that time period of 3 months, my first 3 months on the job, because I had rented an apartment in the Portland area, and unfortunately, it was right next to I-5. I didn't realize it at the time that it would be so noisy, or I would have rented somewhere else. The noise, the traffic, it never stops. It's all night long. So you don't sleep much for a night or two, but after a while, you get so tired that you just have to sleep. So you kind of get used to it, you kind of ignore it. But fortunately, after 3 months, I was able to move from there to a much better place. Well, one night during that first 3 months of my job, I got on the computer and I went to the website of the state where I owed the tax. I just thought, well, I'll download the forms and fill them out. I'll figure out how much tax I owe. Well, when I went to the website, they had a notice. And when I read the notice, I couldn't believe my eyes. In fact, I was shocked. The notice said that this was a first time ever program. Never in the history of the state had they done this, but they were having an amnesty program. And for anybody who owed taxes but had never reported them yet. And that was me. So what is amnesty? Well, amnesty is it just means that you're forgiven for what you owe. Now, a lot of amnesty programs, they will forgive or waive the interest and penalties and fines, late fees, and all that, but you still owe the tax. So that really helps because now your bill is less, but with this program that I read about, with this amnesty program, they waived everything. It said that you wouldn't pay any tax or interest or penalties or late fees or anything. They just wanted you to fill out the forms and file them. I think they wanted to find out how much tax they were missing so that possibly they could improve their collection activities. Now, the next part of my story is also a miracle. So there's really two miracles in this story. One is the amnesty program that they offered. But the second miracle is that this program had a small window of time that you had to file those forms. And if I remember right, it was 60 days. But I'm sure it was no more than 90 days. And when I found it, the program had already started. But I did have some time, I remember that. So I downloaded the forms and I filled them out, mailed them off, and I never heard anything ever again about it. They forgave my tax. Now, you tell me, was that a miracle of God or what? Imagine during that 14-year period of time between 1995, when I owed the tax, and 2009, when I decided to pay it. Imagine I went to their website during that short window of times, probably 60 days, not even knowing what I would find. Forgiveness. But God knew. He knew when they were going to have that amnesty program. And He put the thought and desire in my heart to make that right at that very time. Imagine, I could have waited 6 months and said, well, I'll just save up some money first before I try to do this. But God prompted me to do it at that time, and I listened to His prompting, and He rewarded me for it. Now, on that same list of things to make right, I also had the tithe that I had not paid for 10 years. That was a lot. That was really substantial because I had earned pretty good money back east at my job. And so that one, I did pay. I paid that tithe. I paid it to God's work, and He helped me do it. And He rewarded me for it with blessings. In fact, I made everything right on that list. It took many years because of the things that required money to make them right. But God helped me to eventually make everything right on that list. So I want to leave you with a couple questions. Is there a time limit for sin? If I committed a sin 14 years ago, is it still a sin today? Or did somewhere along the line, somewhere along the way in that timeline, did it get canceled so that it became not a sin anymore? What do you think? In other words, if I committed a sin 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20, or even longer, is it still a sin today? Do I need to confess it? Do I need to try to make it right? Or possibly restitution? Or did somehow it get canceled by the passage of time? I hope you enjoyed my miracle story, and I'll see you next time.